Our next forum this evening is for the House of Delegates, 31st District. There are 3 candidates running for 1 seat in the House of Delegates. The winner will serve a 2-year term. The candidates are Mr. Steve Foreman, Ms. Grace Morrison, Ms. Delores Oates. We drew numbers. Delores wasn't here, so you got the one that was left. You know, they're 1, 2, and 3. And you, Miss Morrison, you'll have the opportunity to speak for 1 minute first, followed by Mr. Foreman and Mrs. Oates. So you have 1 minute, Ms. Morrison.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber and thank all of you who came out. My name is Grace Morrison. I moved to Warren County in 2011. I am a teacher. I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids, and my husband and I live up on the hill, we like to say. And the main reason that I'm here today, I could give you a short story about me, but I've only got 1 minute, so I want to get to the point. I would like to afford the 31st District a choice for unencumbered representation of the people that is not fettered by political or corporate restraint, burden, or indebtedness. And as such, I will create unrestricted channels of communication as warranted by the Virginia Constitution, that I myself, between myself and the people to whom all power is vested, that's you, and derived from, and whose trustee and servant I am at all times amenable to you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Mr. Foreman, you have 1 minute.
Good evening, and thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. My name is Steve Foreman, and I'm the Democratic candidate for Virginia House of Delegates, District 31. I recently had the opportunity to stand in the House of Burgesses in Williamsburg, where representative democracy in America began. Standing in that chamber helped me appreciate the legacy it represents and the deep responsibility that comes with representing District 31 citizens. I believe in providing my constituents with the tools they need to prosper and strengthen their families and their communities. The type of leadership needed to protect the common good is not about being ruthless or dishonest to score a win. It's about attending to the needs of the people I serve. It means valuing and elevating the common interests that bind us together. Let us leave the culture wars behind.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Oates, you have 1 minute.
My name is Delores Oates. I'm the Republican nominee for the 31st House District. I grew up here. This is my home. I love this community. I love the people in this community, and I want what's best for this community. For the last 4 years, I've served on the Board of Supervisors. It's a hard job. No one can take a job like that lightly. When you step into this arena, it's difficult, it's hard, but you want to do it because you want to serve. Servant leadership is the reason I'm running. I believe that you don't go into this because you want to gain profit or any other reason. You go into this because you want to serve the people you love. And that is the reason I'm running. I am uniquely qualified. I have a government degree. I know how it's supposed to work, and it's broken. So I would like to go to Richmond to represent this community, to maintain our rural values, to protect our way of life, to make sure that our cost of living isn't through the roof with undue taxation. I want our children to have educational opportunities that are amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Oates. We're going to have more time. So, the first question is going to be a 2-minute question. It's unusual, and this will be the only one that will have 2 minutes. We're going to start with you, Mr. Foreman. So you'll have 2 minutes to answer this more complex question. What are the 2 biggest issues facing this district you hope to represent, and how do you plan to address those 2 issues?
Well, it's a little bit different looking at things from the state perspective. I'm used to observing things on the local level, and observing things from the state is going to be a change of perspective. I firmly believe that we have freedoms under attack at this point. I think that's something that can be addressed at the state level. We see reproductive freedom is being challenged throughout the country. It will be challenged if the legislature goes red, again, we will see challenges. We have a governor who's attempting to run for president, and he's using scoring points any way he can do that. And that's my concern, is that we will be swept up in his need to run for president. So reproductive freedom is one big thing that's challenged. We're currently seeing, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, everybody here knows that the freedom of speech is under attack, not only here in Warren County or in District 31, but it's happening all over the country. It's happening from the top down. It's a national trend that's going on right now. And if it's unchecked, who knows where we will end up. And that could be, those could be the first two freedoms that are assailed. Who knows what will happen next. So we need to stand up. It needs to happen on a local level. And I'm hoping that from now on, people will be concerned and be participating in elections from now on, because that's the key, is that all this stuff starts at the local level. We need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Oates, what are the two biggest issues facing this district you hope to represent, and how do you plan to address those issues? You have 2 minutes.
So the biggest issue facing this community is education. It is the biggest issue facing the state of Virginia. We need to provide our students with top-notch educational opportunities in order to succeed. And the problem right now is that it is a one-size-fits-all proposition. Our children are unique. They have unique gifts and talents that have been given to them by God. And so we need to address those unique talents by creating an education that meets their needs. Now, I'm going to give you a perfect example. I'm the mother of 3 sons. And I have 1 warrior, or 2 warriors and 1 statesman. My warriors couldn't sit still in school. And so because of that, they thought they were failures by the time they were like in the 4th grade. So we need to address the way different children learn. My sons would have probably been better off had they had been exposed to skills trades in like the early elementary years. One of the things that I will fight for in Richmond is helping children get exposure to the trades at a young age. Let them put things together. Let them learn to build things and fractions by measuring things. That's the way we used to learn it, and we are building a community of skills where the trades are as respected as the educational opportunities. That is very important to me. The second thing that I want to help is that people are struggling to survive because the economy is very difficult right now. Inflation is eating people's ability to pay for the everyday things in their world. So we need to lower taxes. Taxes do not need to be high. When you have $3 billion in excess funds in Richmond, give it back to the people who paid you for it. And that is one thing I will do. I will work very hard to make sure that the money comes back to this community and that it's not being used to support the larger cities.
Thank you, Ms. Oates. Ms. Morrison, what are the 2 biggest issues facing this district you hope to represent, and how do you plan to address those issues? You have 2 minutes.
I think the biggest thing that we're facing is that our elected representatives are not representing us. We have corporations and we have political movements, aka our parties, the unit party, that are supporting and funding their personal agendas, their corporate agendas. And who's getting lost in the shuffle is you and I. And we no longer have a voice at the House. We have representatives that are being handpicked in order to propel agendas of political candidates, political officials. And that is robbing us of our autonomy in our individual communities. I am not a politician. Of course, by definition, I am now because I'm running for office. Apparently that makes you a politician. I'm not a professional. And I think that the House of Delegates in its institution was created to put the people into a position where our voice would not be lost, because even at the early stages of our inception as a nation, our voice was being lost by politics and political pandering in closed door sessions, which we all know are not beneficial to the people. And so I think that is the primary, first and foremost thing. We need to put the people back in politics. The second thing is we need to touch education. We need to make sure that our education is just that we're dealing with things that are at a child level. We need to teach math. We need to teach skills, not in a way that sort of is reminiscent of, categorizing people into, skill trade things that we know from history are not advantageous to our community. But we need to teach educational subjects so that our children know how to function in life and aren't completely traumatized, which dumbs down our system, by all of these adult issues that we keep imposing on them that have nothing to do with their ability to read, write, and comprehend logical statements.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. We're going to move on to question number 2. We'll begin with Ms. Oates. Drug abuse and mental health issues are at the forefront of local and national issues. What steps will you take to promote change?
So one of the things that I've done here in Warren County is I led the effort to get a drug rehabilitation court. I will tell you that during COVID, a good friend of mine lost her son, and she lost her son to an overdose. And it breaks your heart because there were no resources for anyone to find, because we don't have juvenile resources in this community to treat drug addiction. So the drug court, what it did is it announced to the world, or to the community at large, that we were open for somebody to come in and offer drug counseling to the community. The drug court actually brought those resources to this community. It was the side effect or the benefit of creating a drug court. We hope that it helps not only people in the system, but it brought the resources in to help people before they get into the system.
Thank you, Ms. Oates. Ms. Morrison, drug abuse and mental health issues are at the forefront of local and national issues. What steps will you take to promote change?
I think one of the things that we can do is look at the source. Where is it coming from? And nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife used to say. There's a reason that we have such an overwhelming piling up of drugs. My words fail me right now. There's a reason, though, the supply. Thank you. The supply is there, and we need to find the source of the supply and stop it there without pandering, without, well, we can't do that because whatever. Just deal with it. Deal with the supply issue first and foremost. And mental health. We need to establish safe communities where families can thrive. When children feel safe, loved, nurtured in their families and in their communities, they are not easily drawn away by substances that cause them to check out, to phase out into other alternate realities. But they feel secure, and we have to make sure that we're protecting that.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Mr. Foreman, drug abuse and mental health issues are at the forefront of local and national issues. What steps will you take to promote change?
Drug abuse has always been a problem in this country for a very long time. Before that, it was prohibition. When you try to tamp things down too much, you just encourage crime in other fashions. So we need to come up with a better way to deal with these things. But it's always been there, and it's a part of human nature to want to alter your consciousness. But there are some good signs on the horizon. The part of the budget surplus that we currently have in Virginia is being apportioned to mental health and drug addiction services. So we're in hopes that there will be some good things coming out of that to address these things.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Moving on to question number 3. We'll start with I think we're on Ms. Morrison again. Question number 3. From an economic development perspective, how will you promote our area to Richmond?
That's a tricky one, because there's a balance between what I think all of us want, and as I'm listening to all of us, we don't want to become a metropolis here in the Valley. We want to maintain the integrity of our rural community, the quaintness of our mountain home. And so, though we need and want growth and development, We don't want something that's going to take over the infrastructure that we're currently prepared to maintain. So I think the biggest thing that we have going for us is we are one of the most beautiful places in the world. And tourism is got to be at the forefront of development here. Not to the point where we ostracize and push out our residents. We're going to have to work as a team, as a family, to use our Southern hospitality in our small businesses, in our community engagement, to foster a place where others want to come and spend.
Thank you. Mr. Foreman, from an economic development perspective, how will you promote our area to Richmond?
Well, we are truly blessed in this area. We have a plethora of things to do here. We've got unlimited natural beauty. We've got rivers, we've got mountains, we've got the national parks, state parks. We've got wonderful things to do. And soon we'll have another bike trail coming into the area. It's going to bring people into the area. It's sustainable growth, and that's what we really need to work toward. Is finding ways to promote sustainable growth that doesn't take a toll on the resources and brings tax money and money into the businesses here locally. We can't just depend on trees. It's got to be everything else that involved with that.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Mrs. Oates, from an economic development perspective, how will you promote our area to Richmond?
Well, our area promotes itself. So we are a distribution hub because of where we're located. We are on the intersections of 66 and I-81, which both works in our favor and against our favor. But we also have an inland port, and that inland port brings in a lot of revenue to this community in terms of all sorts of all sorts of resources for builders, for all sorts of construction. It's shipped into our inland port. So it actually attracts the distribution and the industrial that you're seeing here currently. What we need to do to balance that is to build small business. A strong small business community has always been the backbone of this country. So I would love to build a small business incubator, help small businesses and entrepreneurs through leadership training, through all kinds of grant opportunities. One of the things I would like to do is hire someone to work in our community in our 31st district, which is Clark, Frederick, and Warren, to be a grant writer. Help people get these grants.
Thank you, Ms. Oates. All right, fourth and final question. We'll begin with Mr. Foreman. Please share your philosophy regarding Virginia public schools and the standards of education.
Well, let's start with the fact that schools are in a bit of a crisis right now. They're been attacked on a lot of fronts. Virginia underfunds its schools compared to the national average and compared to all the local states. Again, part of the budget surplus has been allotted for that, and it was a wise decision to do that. We need to ensure that schools have guidance by professionals. We don't want to be subject to the whims of communities. We have to have some kind of state standard there to make sure that everybody is properly accredited and that everything is covered that needs to be covered for the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Mrs. Oates, please share your philosophy regarding Virginia public schools and the standards of education.
I believe that that competition breeds excellence. And I think that we need to have a competitive environment in our schools. And that means that parents need to have the choice of the best education that they can get for their children. Again, one size does not fit all. We have our unique needs in our rural area that are very different from the needs that are in Fairfax and Arlington. Our schools need to be able to make decisions independent of a central government in Richmond that is applicable to the educational needs of this community. At this point, one size does not fit all, and all of the decisions that come out of Richmond get forced onto us. Teachers have to teach to a test. They just want to teach. They're passionate and they lose creative license when you have to teach to the test. So I would like to give teachers the opportunity to actually teach things they're impassioned about and get the state out of their business all the time and allow local communities to say, we want these kinds of programs.
Thank you, Ms. Oates. We're going to come back to you. All right, that's the end of the questions. Now, we're going to have closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. They can have a stump speech. They can address any of the issues that have come up in tonight's forum. We'll begin with Mr. Foreman. You have 2 minutes.
Excuse me, may I interrupt? I didn't get to answer about.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut it off. I apologize. That's what you were complaining about, huh? That's why they, anyway, I apologize for that. So, final question to Ms. Morrison. Please share your philosophy regarding Virginia public schools and the standards of education.
Thank you. As a teacher, I've taught in public school and in private school. One of my biggest frustrations in public school was that I did have to teach to the SOL, which created a high-pressure environment that didn't allow for the nurturing of certain students in my purview. So there is a better way to do that, and yet we must have high standards for Virginia students. I think that the surplus that we have right now in our state needs to be channeled into our school systems, specifically rural school systems, where teachers want to come and teach, but they're not provided the resources and support that they need in order to be able to stay. Our students need to feel safe. We need to have resource officers available at each of our public schools. And our students need to know that they are getting an education, not an indoctrination, which means we're going to have to really be careful the kind of pressure and weight that we put on our young people.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. I apologize for cutting off. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to address whatever they like, including rebuttals. We'll begin with Mr. Foreman. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I want to start with thanking the Chamber for this event. It's great for us to air our ideas in public. I want to talk about a couple of my priorities. One of my priorities is public education. I want to thank all the teachers who are showing up every day and continue to follow their passion for educating our children despite the difficulties in their way. I believe public money must stay in public schools, but Virginia schools are underfunded compared to the national average. My opponent only last year worked to deprive local families of a good education by withholding 25% of the budget needed to make our schools competitive. But promoting public education includes access to trade schools and apprenticeships and affordable colleges so that students are not faced with huge educational costs. Another priority is providing parents with the tools to create a strong family. I believe in parental rights, and those rights should include fair wages, affordable health care and child care, good housing, and the right to be free from gun violence. Among those rights is the ability for a woman to decide when and how to start a family. We need to invest in people by providing hardworking families the tools needed to prosper. This will provide the foundation to raise well-adjusted children capable of taking advantage of the opportunity to learn and participate in society. In conclusion, I'd like to remind everyone that compromise is a key component of a democracy, and I will pledge that I will not follow a political goal for self-advancement that causes harm to my constituents. I will not fall under the influence of a minority and go against the common good. Let's abandon the culture wars.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Oates, you have 2 minutes.
So education is also an area where I will focus in Richmond, and as I told you, I want to expand educational opportunities, but I believe in school choice. I believe that, like Winsome Sears, that school choice is essential to the competitive environment. It actually raises the standards for everybody. It's been proven in 2 states that are currently doing school choice that the test scores increase. Teachers get paid more money because they actually get to be in a competitive environment. So I will promote everything I can to help public schools, but again, it's not the only answer. There are opportunities in other areas where education can be afforded to parents who want to find a special and or unique education for their unique child. So I will do that in Richmond. I will also go to Richmond to maintain our rural values. We live in a beautiful community where people love family, faith, and freedom, and I will honor those in Richmond. I will also go and I will defend the Second Amendment. I believe that a good guy with a gun is the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun. And so that I will defend that in Richmond. I also will defend safeguarding our elections. I believe that our election has been paid for by a lot of men who have died in battle, and I will make sure that if you go to vote, that it will be required that you show a photo ID so that you are who you say you are, and you vote, and one vote, one person. So those are things that I will fight for in Richmond. I believe that this community deserves leadership, and I feel like I can give that. And based on my experience as a supervisor, I also understand what mandated, unfunded mandates do to local government,
Thank you, Ms.
and I will fight against those.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morrison. One more. Ms. Morrison, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The House of Delegates was established in order to ensure the community that makes up the Commonwealth would have representation to the political hierarchy. It is my earnest belief that in the current climate and our political landscape leaves the general population, which makes up the core of our Commonwealth, without adequate representation. There's a number of ways that we can rig an election, contort an election, not all of which are with machines. If we want to change the status quo, and I believe that we do, it will require changing the way we think about politics, and it will require all of us acknowledging and acting as though we each have a vested interest and responsibility in how we are governed, because we do. George Washington said in his farewell address, September 17, 1796, "However political parties may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines that have lifted them to this unjust dominion." It is my goal in taking this position as an independent conservative candidate to put the people back in politics, to put parents back in education, to protect and preserve public safety in ways that do not overextend the imposition of government and do not impede upon the constitutional liberties which are intrinsic to the people of our Commonwealth.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morrison.